So now that we've navigated that emergency, we failed over it, we've got to have a plan to get back to our original production environment. So in this example, this means bare metal recovery. So Eric, could you walk us through the steps involved in taking Bob, and actually the implications also to Bob's business in terms of data loss and so on, and getting back to the status quo?
Sure, Chris. So, you'll remember here that we failed him over. We had him up and running in 5 minutes, and we could have done bare metal recovery to start, but there would have been a longer delay in Bob's production environment had we done that. The time to replace hardware, to get a new machine unboxed, just the time in order to restore the data from the WAN or even the LAN. Virtual disaster recovery gave him the best possible outcome. So here we can utilize bare metal recovery to get back to that physical environment. So we were continuing to do backups of the virtual environment. So we've got this environment, up to the current point in time, and we can choose to do bare metal recovery, during downtime for Bob, meaning after hours, over the holiday, over a weekend, and I can do this at a time that I'm paying my technicians, normally hour rates instead of overtime. Plus, I don't have the added stress of Bob standing over my shoulder going, hey, when's my server going to be back up and running? So you take the emergency out of the situation, and you can restore and recover this, on your own time in the background, without that looming threat of potential failure and customers watching. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to utilize our bare metal recovery tool, and this tool allows you to create either bootable media, USB or ISO. It's going to boot into a Windows PE, it's the Windows pre-boot environment. It's going to allow us to recover either granular data or the entire system, and then it's going to do a first reboot so that you can see how the system's going to come up following a recovery, and you know what to do to put it back into a production mode. So as I mentioned, we're going to go out to our website here, downloads.maxfocus.com, and we'll select additional tools. And in this case, we'll download the executable bare metal recovery application. So when we launch that, it's going to want to create a bootable USB memory stick. And on that stick, I'd like to have between 8 to 16 gigs of space. And you do want to make sure there's no important data on there because we do format it as part of the creation process. It's also going to ask if you would like to add additional drivers. This could be a video card, a network, or a storage driver. Typically, those are going to be on the Windows PE environment, but let's say you've got a newer system than Windows PE, you can add those. So let's take just a couple moments to finish creating the USB stick, and then we'll go into our first boot. So as we boot up into Windows, you're going to be prompted for network configuration. You can look at the current configuration, set up static or dynamic IPs. I'm also going to set a temporary path for file storage. This would be log files and our backup register that we download. The next component you're going to see is us booting into the Backup Manager, running a light version of Google Chrome. We're going to enter the device name, the password, same as you use for the device. The third credential you're going to need is the encryption key. And the encryption key you created during your initial deployment. It's something that you hopefully wrote down or that you remember. Without that encryption key, you do not have a chance at doing disaster recovery. So it is a required component, and nobody with Logic Now is able to retrieve that for you. We're going to launch look at the sessions here really quick inside of the Backup Manager, make sure we've got a session we want to recover from. We'll go take a look at our local speed vault in the Preferences tab to make sure that we've got the local vault configured. It can see it on the network, or if it's a USB drive, we've got it configured and pointed to the right volume. In this case, a network share. We'll go to the Restore tab. I'm going to open the Disk Manager. Because we're doing a bare metal recovery here, I want to make sure that the disk I'm using is clean or wiped, so I can look at the various partitions, select a drive, and clean that drive. This means that I am laying all the volume data back down again. I'm not trying to overwrite blocks that are there. Yeah, and as you can see now when I list it, all of the data and the partitions are cleared from that volume. So that way we're seeing a true recovery here. Now from this point we're going to pick our recovery session where I want to recover back to. Ideally the most recent backup you've done of your virtual environment in Bob's case. We can select single volume, we can select or exclude directories. In this case I'll do both C and E. And we're going to then kick off the restore job. environment you're going to see after this is going to go through a quick time lapse. So we're looking at about 30 some odd gigs of data we're recovering for this base 2012 R2 system. We're able to recover that in about 22 minutes. Here from start to finish, quick time lapse, but it's going to let you see the entire process, the amount of data that's in the queue, number of files processed, and of course we'll update you as we run through with an estimated time remaining. Now, once that finalizes, you're going to be requested to shut down the computer, remove your USB, eject the CD, those kind of things. But before we do that, let's take a quick look at the session history. So here we can see 32.3 gigs, 22 minutes. We can go to a command prompt, and we can then can take a look at volume C, volume D, volume E, and understand that we've laid data back down again. So now all I need to do is trigger a quick reboot from Windows PE, and we can go into our first boot of this server. So we did the backup, obviously in the middle of the day, while system was running. So to Windows, that looks like an improper shutdown. So one of the first things you're going to get after logging in is, well, why was there an improper shutdown? So in this case, the comment is really going to be bare metal recovery, and the comment is that it was successful because we're back up and in the physical system now. We'll launch the backup manager. We can see that we're running in restore only mode across the top of the screen, and I can switch to standard mode. And I do this after I've turned off the virtual environment when I'm ready to get Bob back up and running on this machine. Putting it into standard mode is going to be able to allow me to start doing backups again to this physical system. You want to make sure you don't have both your virtual environment and your physical environment in backup mode at the same time, because at that point, you're going to confuse the backup. It's not going to know which system is production and which one is, the most current data. So with that, we've got the backup manager running. I can get on the horn, let Bob know that when he comes into work on Monday, he'll be using his production system, or that when he's back from holiday, that everything's going to be back the way it was before his outage. So nice, quick, and easy. Once again, it was done on your own time. And it has a lot of benefits. As I mentioned, you could use it as your first solution, being reactive, but in this case we got proactive when we put it on our schedule instead of Bob's. Just to recap, we create bootable USB, or we give you an ISO image that can be burned to CD. We boot into a Windows PE environment, which includes the majority of drivers and components that you need to boot your environment, although we do give you the ability to inject additional drivers if necessary into that boot image. We can recover to similar or dissimilar hardware or disk sizes. We support environments using BIOS or UEFI configurations, or disk structures that are based on MBR, master boot record, or GPT partitions. With a few caveats there, I don't convert between GPT and MBR or between BIOS and UEFI, but we do allow you to do bare metal recovery back to the same type of configuration that the original system was protected. And we're going to support most of the most of the modern operating systems out there, 32 and 64-bit, Windows Vista through Windows 10, Server 2008 through 2012 R2. A couple caveats out there today, not fully supported around Microsoft Small Business Server editions. We have had some success and some limitations in the environment depending on configuration and structures, but I would once again recommend you reach out to our support site, support.maxfocus.com, where you can look at specifics around platform details and additional requirements, recommendations on how you clean your drives before performing a recovery, and so on.